Welcome back to the channel, your number one source for income-oriented investing. Our returning champion, very special guest, Mr. Jay Pesticelli, back on the channel from Zega Financial. How's it going, Jay? So glad to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks. I always love our time together. So I'm looking forward to some good darts you're probably going to throw my way this time
Yeah,
around.
I'm not gonna hold back, and this is why I like having you because you always tell me, well, I could talk about anything. Just ask me any questions you want. I absolutely love that. So to my audience, in case you didn't know, Jay and his team at Zega are the sub-advisors or the guys who actually are the brains or the managers, do the option strategies behind it, all the YieldMax products and the Defiance ETFs products, which of course are income oriented of great interest to us. And we will discuss. We got a lot to discuss. So we'll start with the yield max,
Okay,
if you don't
great.
mind, and then we'll do the Defiant side. So a couple of new products I want to ask you about. First of all, we discussed YMAX before, and that to me, I'm a big fan of the all-in-one style ETS, but you came out with Ulti. So Ulti is very, very interesting. So can you explain just very briefly what the Ulti, which is like the ultra income ETF is? That the yield is very, very, very high, and it looks like the stocks in there. I was looking at them the other night. These are like more smaller, more weirder stocks that I haven't heard of. So what's the premise behind this Ulti?
Yeah, so Ulti, ticker ULTY, that's why we all call it Ulti, right? Of course, is designed to utilize stocks, build a portfolio of stocks that have a high volatility, and we have a lot of flexibility in what the holdings can be in Ulti, right? As
Okay.
long as we're running a covered call or covered call synthetic strategy, we can add a stock to that portfolio. And you're right, there's definitely some lesser known names in the portfolio. But there's also some kind of oldies but goldies, right? Coin is in there, MicroStrategy is
Coinbase.
in there. Yep, Coinbase is in there. So there's a handful of ones you may recognize, but the idea is we search, the options market with certain criteria like enough volume, right? Enough market cap in
Mm-hmm.
the underlying stock, those kinds of things. But we search for stocks that have a high level of implied volatility, which means we could sell calls for even more. You've seen this with us on for example, the NVIDIA or coin. When the volatility is high, we actually could generate higher distribution rates because we're capturing that volatility. Well, with
Yeah.
Ulti, we are just looking straight up for stocks that have high volatility, meet certain market cap criteria, meet certain option volume criteria. They're not necessarily always stocks that are going to go straight up. We're not always looking to find the stocks. That's not the primary goal, is to find stocks that are going to go up. Our goal is to find stocks that have a high volatility where we could sell the calls, the covered calls, or what I'll say, the call spreads with the synthetics, that we could generate really a much higher level of distribution.
Okay. So compare it to YMAX. First of all, my first question, will Ulti be added to YMAX?
Ah, Ulti will not be added to WiMAX. Ulti will be its own standalone fund of multiple tickers. We did
Okay.
file for it at the same time, but it will not be added to WiMAX.
Okay, just like why Mag, the Magnificent Seven will also not be added. Well, those, it's kind of different because those seven I think are already in YMAX themselves separately. Okay,
Right.
so that was my number one question. So how would you compare someone who's trying to figure out what should I buy, Alti or YMAX? To me, YMAX is more the less volatile, more conservative, more diversified option. Alti is really if you just want you're really trying to harness maximum volatility, which you guys are doing the hunting to figure out which stocks go in and out. I mean,
Yep,
that's
you
how I
got it.
see it.
Yeah, no, you're right. So WiMAX is, for everybody's benefit, is the basket of
Yeah.
YieldMax tickers that are running a covered call strategy that have had one dividend already, and that's an important point because you're probably going to ask me later, when do things go in? So WiMAX is it's what we call a fund of funds. So it's
Yeah.
all of our funds in the basket. And actually, as an advisor, I actually talk about WiMAX quite a bit for to other advisors that are looking to get into the YieldMax suite, but not sure which one to pick. WiMAX is nice because, like you said, it's a basket
Yeah, it's
of the
diversified.
existing
Yeah.
YieldMax. Yeah, and it's diversified. And look, you've got the high flyers, like we talked about before, but you also have the DISOs, the Disney, and the JPMOs, the JP Morgan one, in there as well. So you're
Yeah.
right; it does create a little bit of stability and less volatility. So if you're, it still has a fairly significant distribution rate, right? It's over 30%. Could be, we'll see, but it could be as high as 40, right? It's that 30 to 40 range that we've seen so far. So you're still going to get a fairly strong distribution rate. It's just not what Ulti is, which, like you said, is hunting for high volatility. Well, even though there's some diversification in the sectors we pick, the primary screen is first for high volatility. So high volatility with a very high yield is Ulti. If you want exposure to all the yield max funds because you don't know which one to pick and you want some diversification and stability, YMAX is the choice.
Yeah, WiMAX is definitely a nice, in my opinion, it's a very convenient all-in-one option, which is my favorite type of product. I actually, in my stock app, I put the S&P 500 and WiMAX right next to each other. It's kind of correlated, and I think the more you keep adding to it, the more diversified, the less volatility will have, because the more diversified it will be. So I really like WiMAX a lot. You guys added YBit, so I know you've been getting a lot of requests. So you now have a Bitcoin one as well, where you're doing the calls or the synthetic calls on BITO ETF, I believe. So that's
Yes.
cool. Just like any other yield max strategy, I don't think we need to talk about in detail about that one. But I do want to talk about your first short one or inverse one. And by the way, when I saw the stock symbol, I kind of laughed because crash, Tesla's crashing, I guess. And so this is your first short option one. So you started with Tesla as the first one. Now your first short one is on Tesla, CRSH. So tell me a little bit about this. Why did you guys come up with it? What's the concept behind this? And are there more short ones coming?
Yeah, so you're right. This is a very interesting strategy. It's not a covered call, it's a covered put. And a lot
Covered
of people
put?
haven't heard about that strategy, right? Where it's just the inverse of a covered call, where you're long and you sell away upside. Well, with a covered put, you're short, meaning you're bearish the underlying, and you're selling away some of the downside. So you participate in some of the decline. So as the underlying Tesla drops, crash should positively participate in that, but it has a limit based on where the short put is sold, and that is the income driver. So
Okay.
when this is I'm going to say this. This is really the first of its kind. Well, the yield max was certainly, we launched Tesla. The single stock ETFs were unique. There already were covered call ETFs in existence, right? QALD has been around forever, right? But when you look at what Crash is as an inverse with premium selling associated with it, what we're excited about it because it is truly, the first one of its kind to be out there. And you should expect, just like with Tesla, similar distribution rates tied to the implied volatility of the underlying stock. So all of the rules still apply. It's just that you could get appreciation when the underlying stock Tesla declines. And
Goes
so
down.
it's a
Okay.
nice offset from everything else that we have done. And this is, while we're doing this interview, it's only been live for 2 days. We'll see what the pickup looks like. We'll see if people want something that is, inversely related to some of their other holdings.
Yeah, super interesting. And of course, I'm going to ask you this. Will this one be added to WiMAX?
Okay. So Y Max is a covered call, is a fund of funds of our covered call single stock ETFs.
Okay.
Since this is not a covered call, it is a covered put. It will not be added to Y Max, but I could see if we have 4 or 5 of these or more of these down the road, we end up having an inverse Y Max as well. So this won't find its way into Y Max, whereas like YBit will find its way in eventually. Crash won't, because it's actually a bearish type position. So it is kind of its own standalone. You also asked me how many we filed for. I think we filed for 6 when we filed for the Tesla one, which is Crash,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, glad you liked the name. We thought it was, I can't
Fun.
take credit for the name. One of our partners came up with it. I thought it was brilliant. Everybody liked it. We filed for a Coinbase inverse one. We filed for an NVIDIA one. We filed for an ARK one. I think we filed for one for the Qs. And of course, Tesla is here. And I think we filed for an Apple one too. So, and those will have some interesting tickers as well. Those, it's public. I'm not, telling you
Yeah.
what the hidden is, but like the Apple one, I think is ROTN, like rotten, right? And the one for Coinbase is fiat, like fiat currency, and the one for
That's good.
the one for Nvidia. This was a hard one. Was dips, chips and dips, right? The other side of it. So we had a little fun with the tickers there. I think it's one of those things that when people are looking for them, they'll already know what they're looking for to find them. So we weren't as concerned with, the ticker consistency. We wanted to make them kind of unique, though.
That's pretty cool. So in short, if you're bearish, you think Tesla is going to go down, you would get the crash. If you're more bullish, you would get the Tesla. If you just want maximum income on the most volatile stuff, there's Ulti. And then if you just want a fund on funds, if you're generally, I call it, covered call, I call it, you're cautiously optimistic because you're putting calls on it. So you're optimistic, but you have a bit of pessimism. That's what I have. And that would be your WiMAX all in one. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. I mean, definitely going to keep an eye on all the YieldMax new launches. I think they're really great. I'm trying to finagle my portfolio personally to incorporate WiMAX in there at some time. I got some fixed income stuff that eventually I want to get rid of. I'm just waiting for rate cuts to go down, so those go up and I swap it into
Gotcha.
WiMAX. But that's just me personally. I don't want to bore you with that. Let's move on to, unless there's anything else you want to talk about for the YieldMax, I'm okay. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
And
no,
those are the,
we'll just continue to have, additional yield maxes come out, right? We're
Mhm.
just regular cadence, and that's it. And I think you've covered yield max.